The Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban has finally gone too far. Hungary will be deprived of its voting right in the European Union, and as I have already mentioned, all the mechanisms and tools for this are in place. The fact is that the Council of the European Union will consider applying Article 7 of the Treaty on European Union, which provides for depriving a member country of its voting rights in the event of a threat of serious violation of common European values. And this is evidenced by the official agenda of the meeting of the Council of the European Union that has been published. Orban has gone too far, leading to attempts to revoke his voting rights. Moreover, the European Parliament has called for a complete freeze of all funding to Hungary from Brussels. As you know, Viktor Orban's government receives a good amount of money from the European budget, despite the fact that he is clearly an autocrat who doesn't care at all about Brussels and has even declared that he intends to occupy Brussels. Moreover, this individual fully cooperates with Moscow. Well, and now public opinion in Hungary also says a lot, because half, even a little more than half of Hungarians are dissatisfied with Viktor Orban's rule. Orban, rather than addressing issues within his own country, is vehemently opposing Ukraine's acceptance into the European Union. He says, quote, "It will suck up all the resources like a sponge." I'm Alexei Pechet. Today is May 23rd. Let's discuss this topic. Before we start, please subscribe to the channel, like the video and leave a comment. Subscribe to the Pechet News Telegram channel, link in the video description. We publish news as it arrives. So, Europe, as they say, endured and endured, but finally couldn't take it anymore. The European Union Council will consider revoking Hungary's voting rights. Orban is being accused of problems with the electoral system, the independence of the judiciary and the observance of minority rights. But most importantly, European officials are tired of Viktor Orban's constant blocking of aid to Ukraine and blocking of sanctions against Russia. Is it truly feasible that this extraordinary event will occur and Viktor Orban will be removed from power? Hungary may lose its voting rights in the European Union thanks to Article 7 of the Treaty on European Union. So what does that mean? The Council of the European Union for General Affairs will put on the agenda the consideration of the possibility of applying Article 7 of the Treaty on European Union to Hungary, which provides for depriving an European Union member state of its voting rights, in the event of a threat of a serious violation of common European values. This is evidenced by the published official agenda of the meeting. This is already the 8th hearing within the framework of this procedure initiated by the European Parliament. As of 2018, the issue has persisted for 7 years without a resolution. The claims against official Budapest concern the electoral system, the independence of the judiciary, and the observance of the rights of national minorities. Despite numerous recommendations, Viktor Orban's government has not carried out any substantial reforms at all. A new wave of criticism against Hungary from European partners has been caused by the systematic blocking of sanctions against Russia and the stalling of Ukraine's European integration. In April 2021, Estonian Foreign Minister Margus Tsahkna stated that within the European Union, support is growing for the idea of depriving Budapest of its influence on decision-making. If the decision is approved, Hungary will lose its veto right, which Orban actively uses to block financial aid to Ukraine and to weaken sanction pressure on Russia. The European Union is sending a clear signal that systematic violations of democratic norms and cooperation with authoritarian regimes will not go unpunished. Well, at least that's how it looks. And all these claims against Orban are absolutely justified. Because, look, I won't list all his sins, I'll just take literally the most recent ones. Like today, Viktor Orban stated that Ukraine will drain the European Union if it joins the European Union. And he expressed confidence that Hungarians would support the government's position against Ukraine's membership in the European Union in a referendum. As Viktor Orban stated, in the long term, Ukraine wants to maintain an army of 1 million people, and we will be the ones paying for this army, says Viktor Orban. Europeans, instead of strengthening their own Western European armed forces, Hungary wants to keep Ukraine outside the European Union. Because if we let it in, it will soak up all the resources like a sponge. In addition, Orban began to speak about an energy threat from Ukraine, complaining about the European Union's intention to stop purchasing energy resources from Russia. That is, the European Union says, we don't want to buy gas, oil or petroleum products from Russia anymore, because it's an aggressor country, a rogue state that can manipulate this, raise prices and so on. We don't need this. We want to completely give all of this up. Orban says, Ukraine is to blame. You see, Ukraine is to blame for everything. According to Viktor Orban, without gas and oil from Russia, Hungary will have to pay an additional 800 billion forints a year for gas from other sources. Viktor Orban, you had at least a little more than 3 years to find other sources of gas supply. But you kept going and hugging and kissing and cuddling with Putin. According to Viktor Orban, Hungarians will face doubled electricity costs and quadrupled heating bills. The funds allocated to reduce utility costs will simply disappear this way, says Viktor Orban. But the thing is, not all Hungarians, fortunately, agree with him, and Hungarian society is deeply divided in its views regarding the 15-year tenure of Prime Minister Viktor Orban in power. Half of those surveyed are dissatisfied with his rule. So, this is a survey conducted by the company Telex. And half of the respondents believe that Orban's government has had a rather or clearly negative impact on the country's development, while 39% rate his rule as positive. Among voters of the ruling Fidesz party, support for their prime minister is almost unanimous. 88% consider his actions positive, and only 1% view them negatively. However, voters of the opposition party, TISA, have the opposite opinion. 87% of them rated Orban's influence as negative, and only 1% as very positive. In addition, sociologists point out significant differences in views between age groups. Only among citizens over 60 years old is there a relative predominance of positive assessments of Orban. Meanwhile, almost 60% of young people aged 18 to 25 expressed a negative opinion about the era of Viktor Orban. But there are some more interesting details here. 65% of respondents believe that Orban's government has mostly benefited the rich during this time. They believe success is only possible with connections to those in power. Attention, please. 65% of Hungarians believe that if you don't have connections, you won't achieve anything in this country. Even 45% of supporters of the Fidesz party, Viktor Orban's party, acknowledge the importance of political connections for advancement and growth in this country. Comparing Orban and the opposition leader Petra Madja, the majority believes that the latter would handle key issues better, such as fighting corruption, healthcare, education, and economic development. Orban is credited only with strong points in migration policy and family support. Despite this, almost 40% of Hungarians do not believe that Orban's government can be changed through democratic means. However, more people now believe change is possible compared to 5 years ago. The most optimistic are the voters of the TISA party. They say that everything can be changed without violence, and they call on Orban to finally resign. And it's interesting, what here could push Viktor Orban a little bit towards stepping down? Of course, not very voluntarily, and Orban will resist very strongly, but the point is that a group of deputies from the European Parliament recently called on Brussels to freeze absolutely all funding intended for Hungary, accusing the country of restricting freedom, undermining democracy, and failing to comply with the legislation and values of the European Union. It is noted that Hungary, under the leadership of Orban, is constantly in conflict with the entire European Union, which has already frozen billions of euros for the country. In a letter signed by 26 members of the European Parliament, it is stated that Hungary is not only failing to make improvements, but there is also further alarming regression being observed. The letter mentions a recently adopted law aimed at banning the lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender parade in Budapest, as well as reforms targeting the undermining of judicial independence and the suppression of government critics. Next, I will quote from this letter: "To continue funding a corrupt regime that openly undermines European values is unacceptable. Therefore, we call for the immediate cessation of any funding to Hungary using all available legal instruments." Therefore, if Viktor Orban is stripped of his voting rights and also has his funding cut off, which he has been parasitizing on anyway, then of course his era could truly come to an end. However, everything hinges on the resolve of the Europeans, which I reiterate. In 2018, for the first time, there was discussion about invoking Article 7 of the Treaty on the European Union, which could strip Hungary of its voting rights. This issue was first discussed in 2018 and remains unresolved after 7 years. This issue is being raised again, making it difficult to predict anything. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.